Hey guys, Keenan and Celeste here. We are going to teach you our sports massage class today. So we're going to teach you just like you are right in front of us, so hopefully you get the same experience as if both she and I were going through the class. We're going to talk about sports massage, we're going to talk about why we do it, when we do it, who we work on, and the best approaches for it. So I think you guys know when we teach sports massage that we work with a whole variety of athletes, and we have a strong group of clients that are amateur or semi-pro athletes that have some type of race or some type of training that they're working with. A lot of times they have coaches. So we're going to be a little bit more specific and broader than what just plain sports massage is, but we're going to drive home those main messages. So what are we covering, Keena?
So first of all, what is sports massage? Well, sports massage really can be a wide range of techniques, but it's really just meant to help that athlete be the best that they can possibly be within whatever sport that they are working with, whether that's running or cycling or climbing or basketball. All of those things have slightly different approaches because they're using their bodies in very different ways, but a sports massage really is meant to be geared around what exactly that athlete is trying to get from their body. It can be to support for performance, so increasing their performance, making them faster, making them stronger, helping them with all of that. And it can also be for injury prevention as well as injury recovery. So essentially, any of those approaches with the specific goal in mind of helping them with their athletic performance is really what a sports massage is. So it can be a wide range of techniques, and it's really generally going to be bringing stimulation and blood flow to the area and working with a specific set of muscles that athlete is really using on a regular basis. We work with lots of different athletes, whether that's somebody who's out racing every weekend or playing games really regularly on more explosive sports. And we can also work with people who just go out for a couple-mile run few times a week. So any of those people have different ranges on what they're going to need from their massage, and it's really all about catering that massage to that person with that activity specifically in mind.
And understanding how many times they're doing it, being really inquisitive. So we ask a lot of questions to get that understanding of what it is that they're doing, how their body's working. You can do a really incredible therapeutic sports massage even if you don't know their sport, but by asking the right questions. So that's one of the things that we're going to cover. You guys will practice technique and demonstration and everything in the classroom, but today we'll spend a lot of time talking about those questions and those type of things that we ask so that you're starting to tweak the massage and sessions to what it is that they're needing. And I think some main pointers when you're talking to people about sports massage is the two key pointers are this. It helps to improve performance, and its main purpose is for recovery. So how recovery helps, and we'll talk about this more, but how recovery helps an athlete have a better performance is the faster that we can recover those muscles back to their optimal state, the harder they can train and the more consistent and close together they can train. Ultimately, that makes them perform a lot better. So that's the main focus of sports massage. Sometimes we get a little tripped up in the idea of what it is that we need to do and we want to fix things, but really we want to recover.
Right, and so in the ways that sports massage really helps in that performance is not in that we're making their muscles stronger or anything like that. What we're really doing is maximizing their recovery so that they can then train harder to be faster and stronger in a shorter period of time, and also to help prevent injury. So when you're out there training for a marathon, for instance, you start with like 2 miles, and then you go to 5 miles, and then 8 miles, and then 20 miles, and as you are increasing the amount of strain that you're putting on your body, you're also increasing the amount of chances that you have to have injury. Small muscle imbalances that you don't really notice at 2 to 3 miles start to come out at like 8 to 10 or 12 or 17. And so getting massage on a regular basis can kind of help address those issues before they really become problematic. And it can keep something that starts out as like kind of an annoying small problem from turning into this chronic thing that then people have to deal with for years and years on end, which we often see in the massage room. So it's important to really keep in mind, like, where are they in their training? What is it that they're trying to do? Are they trying to train for a big event, or are they just trying to be a little bit more fit in their life? Have they already done their event and they're looking to recover for their next one, or they're done for the season? All of these things are things that you need to kind of keep in mind and ask questions about when you're starting a session. All the benefits that people can get from a sports massage are injury prevention and recovery, like we talked about, addressing those muscle imbalances to kind of catch, if their right hip is overcompensating a little bit for their psoas, then while they might not notice that at first, over time, using that muscle again and again and again, it becomes more fatigued, and all of those other muscles start to try and take over, and they can end up with some injuries there. So addressing those muscle imbalances before they become injuries, increasing mobility, so increasing flexibility. When you have more mobile muscles and joints, you're able to maximize what you can actually get those muscles and joints to do, so that's why that's important. That's why stretching is important. That's why getting massage is important through any sort of physical activity that you're doing. Reduce pain, always a good thing after you work out really hard. Massage can help reduce the pain that you're feeling, so that's always a plus. People usually like that. Improve blood flow, improve tissue elasticity. So when that muscle is contracting and relaxing, it has more ability to do that back and forth. Decrease cumulative fatigue. So as people are training over the course of a year or of a season, you start out really fresh, and then as you start working every week, every couple of days, in addition to the fatigue that you get when you're actually working out, your body just in general kind of gets tired. And so by the end of your training, after a few months, you have this what's called cumulative fatigue, where your body's just tired because you've been working out every 2-3 every single day for the last couple months. And so massage can kind of help extend that a little bit so you can reduce that cumulative fatigue. It will not eliminate it by any means. If you're working out every single day, trying to train for something, a few months down the road, you're still going to be tired, but massage can kind of help extend that and recover from that a little bit more. And also assist in mental preparation. If you guys have ever competed in anything or done anything physical, you know that your mental mentality about how you're approaching something really makes a big difference. So when somebody can come in as an athlete and lay on the table and relax for a little while and let some of that tension and apprehension about their event kind of roll through them, they're really in a much better mental preparedness state for their actual event. And any athlete, especially on the top levels, when you're talked to, the mental preparedness is really a huge part of their performance. So that's another way that massage can help.
And in addition, we have a really good opportunity to work with our athletes. Some of you guys might notice that oftentimes athletes, they have the ability to push their body way further than most people do. And they can be really, really hard on themselves. And often those same train of thoughts that run in their head, they run about their body. So they will continue to push and push and push. We have a really good opportunity to just remind them of how incredible their body is and how it is that it's taken them where it is, and to start to get them to shift some of those beliefs that they have about how their body works, and some of those negative descriptors that they kind of use. You'll hear cyclists and different athletes use the word suffering a lot, and so I often, as I work with athletes, think that it's a good opportunity to be able to kind of start to shift those thoughts around, and even talk about that mental preparedness and how that impacts their event. You'll hear kind of where they're gonna suck at their race or different things like that. It's a good time to be able to just tell them, hey, your body is incredible and you are performing 1,000 times beyond most other people. Like, get them to just recognize that space too, because that's also what we do as therapists. And you can see some huge shifts in your athletes. And part of these benefits, and when you get to work with athletes in this way, becomes really, really rewarding, because you can see someone who's running a marathon. You get to see them at the beginning, and then you get to hear how their results are after they have been in their Ironman or their marathon or their first 5K, whatever it is. It's incredibly rewarding. So when you start to work with these people and they're your regular clients and you see them throughout their training, that also becomes something that is rewarding to us too, that I love. So that's something to keep in mind.
Right. The other part of working with athletes, in addition to us really being able to see the shifts and changes in their bodies and kind of go on that journey with them, is also that they are really invested in their bodies. And it's true, it's less said, that a lot of times when people are pushing themselves to be on the edge of their best, they tend to focus on the things that, they're not doing the way that they think they should. Maybe they're trying to break a 6-minute mile, and they're like, oh, my stupid knee is holding me back, and they have all these negative thoughts. But they're so invested in their body that they're also will be very responsive. They'll be very responsive to the work that we're doing. They're invested in continuing to make their body better. So you'll really see those results. Sometimes when we're working with somebody who we only see once a month, or maybe they are a little bit less active, they're not pushing their body on the same level, so they're also not noticing the changes as quickly. Whereas when we're working with athletes, we can sometimes see those changes very fast, and they'll notice, and it's making a difference and an impact on their life, not only like in general, but in that week, in that race, in that month, they're seeing those changes. So that makes it really fun for us to work with as well. So one thing to keep in mind when working with athletes is, what is our role as a therapist? We've talked about that somewhat, but really the most important thing that we need to do as a therapist is to listen to our clients. Every person in every type of sport is a little bit different, and we need to keep that in mind. Just because we've worked on 10 cyclists doesn't mean that the 11th cyclist is going to have the same sort of issues or mentality or even the same kind of race as the other cyclists that we've worked on. Everybody kind of has their own niche. Everybody has their own efforts and the things that they're great at and the things that they struggle with, and their bodies are all different. So it's really important to listen to our athletes and to any of our clients, really. We need to be able to utilize a wide array of techniques and select the ones that are appropriate. So that's the other part where listening comes into play. If somebody's saying that they've been having these cramps in their quads every time they run uphill, then they're going to need a different set of techniques than somebody who's having some ankle issues, or if I drew a blank on another thing. That's a problem. And also kind of helping to select what the best, not only the best type of modality, but also the best timing for all of the techniques that somebody is working with. So when is it good to be giving a massage? Massage is most helpful for an athlete if it's done on a regular basis. And the reason is because it can actually become part of their training. So as an athlete is training for whatever their sport is, they're essentially imprinting their body with muscle memory again and again, overlaying that. Massage can come in and help with that recovery and also become part of that training, so that the body is expecting that recovery, expecting that increase in elasticity, expecting those changes to come into play, so that it becomes really seamless with the rest of their training. Ideally, something like once a week or sometimes even more frequent is going to be the absolute ideal. Not everybody can do that. So if it ends up being something a little bit more like once a month or once every couple of months, you just need to communicate with your clients about what the difference in expectation that they can be from that, and make sure that we're having the best positive impact, not just the biggest impact. That's a big difference. We want to make sure that the impacts that we're having are positive ones, and not necessarily just, I need to get this knot out right here. Because that's not always what's going to be best, especially if we're not seeing somebody for a prolonged period of time. So it's really best and most helpful on a regular basis. It's also, because sports massage is really focused on recovery, it's also best to be doing that after whatever their hardest effort is. So if we're talking about a 1-week cycle, whatever their hardest effort is for that week, even if it is a race or a game, we want to be seeing them immediately after that, because we'll get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of in terms of recovery. And it won't be like, okay, well, we did like our, halfway sort of effort, and then we got a recovery massage, and then 2 days later we're doing our biggest effort. We're kind of making things slow down a little bit more, as opposed to if we do it right after our biggest effort, then we kind of go into that next week with the most recovery possible, which means that they'll be able to maximize their training the best.
Yep. And I always love being able to explain it in terms that clients can get it, as far as massage on a regular basis and how it does. We have to remember that these athletes already invest a lot of money, especially when you start working with triathletes and those kind of things. Those are really expensive sports. Cycling, expensive sports. Even tennis and some of the other things are all actually really expensive sports. A lot of these clients that we work with have coaches that they hire every single month, and they forget about the most important component of that, which is their body. So they'll spend money on, we know that bikes cost way up to $8,000, almost as much as cars. They will spend a whole lot of money on all of the equipment and make sure that they have the best equipment, best coaches. And we got to remind them that, this physical body is the most important component to your sport. And a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, duh. that makes sense that I need to work on this. And they think of it in terms of working harder and stretching, but they don't think of these muscle imbalances or increase in circulation or the recovery. And once you explain it to them in that way, they're like, oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, I have to have a coach because he's going to help me perform. And massage therapists, we're right in the same space as that coach because we help their body recover. And those two work together. And a lot of times when you start talking in that conversation or that level with clients, they really get that you understand what's going on. And then they understand the investment in it because they are investing a lot, not just financially, but time-wise. So why wouldn't you do that the same on the most important thing is your body? That's what's propelling you. That's what's moving you forward. So I always like to use that conversation with my clients because it makes sense to them in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other part that we need to keep in mind as therapists is to always remember that as much as we know about the body, as much as we're working with people, our clients, our athletes, they are living in their body 24 hours a day. So they are really the experts on their own personal body, and it's always good to keep that in mind and also let them know that, like, you can try and pay as much attention as possible in massage in terms of like what's too much pressure or whether they're twitching or whether they're like breathing really hard or holding their breath, all that kind of thing. But ultimately that person on your table is the person who's the biggest expert in what their body is doing and feeling. And so you always need to be referring back to their expertise in their body and reminding them that as much as you know about massage, they know what's the most about their body. And that communication back from them, that feedback back from them is what's going to be able to get you the most effective session. So remind your clients of that and also keep that in mind when you're talking with them. You want to investigate and find out as much information as you possibly can about what they're doing and what their body's doing and how they're feeling. Always take after the session, you want to take your assessment, and the next time they come back in, you want to bring them back to that session and say, okay, what did you notice after that session, so we can make sure that we continue to build on the things that are positive for you and maybe scale back on the things that were not as positive. If they were a little bit too sore for a couple extra days, then we probably need to scale back on the pressure or spend a little bit more time stretching or things like that. So we always want to be able to edit our sessions to make sure that we're continuing to do the sessions that are going to be most performance-based for them. And so it also is helpful to be able to work with people on a regular basis because you then can get those different pictures and know what's normal for their bodies or what their expectations are, and kind of work together on a plan and massage session that'll be most beneficial for them.
Yep.
Good. All right. So, some general questions to always ask before beginning a session. And keep in mind that even if you are working with somebody who hasn't specifically booked a sports massage, you still should, if they say anything at all about some type of athletics or activity, you should still probably go into these questions, like get into your sports massage brain, just to make sure that you're really giving them the session that they're looking for the most, even if they're not booking a sports massage. Or they're specifically after a race or something like that. It's still good to kind of get into this mind frame. So some general questions to ask before a session. What types of sports or activities are you involved in? What stage of training are they in? Do you have any specific events that are coming up or recently passed? Because that'll change what type of massage you're giving them. And are there any specific aches and pains? I hope you're asking this with everybody already anyway. And any past or current injuries that we need to know about. So, and that last one can be kind of tricky because a lot of times athletes will dismiss a lot of injuries that they've had in the past because they feel like it's not relevant to the moment or they don't want us to baby them. So sometimes you have to be a little bit of an investigator in terms of that. So if you happen to notice any significant scars while you're working on people, always ask about what's that scar is from so you can figure out if there's anything going on. I mean, I've had people not tell me about hip replacements or things like that. And you're like, I kind of could use that information before we started the session. But you can always change it up as you're in there, but always ask that question and try and be as thorough as possible.
Yeah, and so going back to number one, what sports or activities are you involved in? Again, you don't have to know the sport, play the sport, or be a professional in it, but that's a good question to ask because you can get your mind frame into what body actions they're doing and what muscles are used or what automatic imbalances they might have. While everybody's different, there still are some similarities, and we'll talk about maybe some similarities in runners and cyclists that we see that's often to get you thinking about that. But it's good to know. I mean, there's been times where I had let's see, so I had someone who was a golfer, and I've actually never golfed before in my whole entire life, and I said, show me the action that hurts. Show me your swing. I don't need to know what a good golf swing is to know when there's some muscle imbalances. I mean, we're already professionals at that. We're experts at that. Don't be afraid to say, show me the action that hurts. Show me where it hurts, and get them to go into the movement. Sports massage take our mind frame off just the table for so much. We can be a little more specific and a little more thorough in our intake in that investigation part when it comes to those kind of things. So think about it in terms of that. What stages you're training in? It's really important to know that, because if we have somebody that is close to their marathon or close to their Ironman or their cycling race, we need to know where they're at in that training, because as we approach the race date, we really want to scale back the type of deeper therapeutic work, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, deep work or the type of work specifically. But we want to know where they're at in their training, and start to get an idea of their training cycles. So when we say training cycles, what that means is if they're working with a coach or they are training for some type of longer term event, more than likely they have a training cycle. So what Kina had talked about earlier, finding out what their lighter days are, their heavier days are, it's okay to ask what that training cycle looks like, because it is going to help play into where we put their massage, and tell them that too. It's important when we do these massages, so this is why I'm asking this. All of this really starts to show your expertise as well, and that's what they want to know, because these people want to work with experts. I mean, they're working with coaches. They want to know that you're an expert. So asking those questions. Do you have any events coming up? Athletes, like Kina said, are tremendous for just being tough and acting tough. They will not tell you that they have a race on Sunday, and they'll want you to hammer on them and do the deepest work. They think that that's what's going to be most appropriate. But you need to know when the race is and help to re-educate them, because the last thing you want to do is to do a deep massage and they have a marathon the next day, or they have a cycling race the next day, because it will actually decrease their performance. So we have to spend some time re-educating them. Ask them, when is their event? Put that in their notes so that you know, and you can make those adjustments to training as you, or the sessions as you go along. Let's see, any specific aches and pains? Kina already covered that. Athletes are notorious for not letting you know about injuries. Again, they want to be incredibly tough. I had a client today, one of my athletic clients, no kidding. I've been seeing him for 3 years, and just today he told me he had his first rib removed. Wow. I probably should have known that. So we have to ask if they have any injuries or they've had any surgeries, whether they think it's relevant or not. So ask them that question, and then they'll go, oh yeah, because it could create muscle imbalances or things that they don't realize. And again, we're really about re-educating them on the body and letting them know how that is relative to what it is that they are doing. I mean, a first rib missing, one rib missing, is going to be relative to any muscular imbalance in the body. So poke at that just a little further, even if you don't see that they have any injuries, like Kina said, any scars, things like that. Really make sure you double check.
Yeah, and sometimes they really just honestly forget about them because they're looking at pushing their body right now. You know, their brain tends to be in the future, on the present, and what they can be doing right now to be increasing. So sometimes they just don't even remember the past injuries that they had because mentally they've moved past it, which is great, but a lot of times their body hasn't. So we need to be able to investigate as much as we can in order to make those adjustments. You know, whether there's some scar tissue bound up that's not allowing them to have as much movement in their pelvis as they would like to, and maybe that's shortening their step and they can't run as fast, and they may not know any of those things, but keeping that in mind and always asking those questions. Even if you've been seeing somebody for a long time, you know, if you get any new information, we can always adjust. So always ask those questions every single time. If you see somebody every single week, you still want to say, you know, okay, well, so you've told me before that Wednesdays is your rest day, so this is a great day for you to come in for a massage. Is that, you know, how was your rest day? And they may be like, oh yeah, I wasn't really feeling like I wanted to rest, so I went up ahead and did 100 miles up a hill. And you're like, okay, great, that totally changes how I'm going to approach your massage today. Because while they may have a cycle, they're also human and it's a live world, so things also change. That's why it's always good to continue to ask these questions every single time, even if you're seeing somebody really regularly.
And one question that I like to ask when you get that client who does work with a coach and they may not tell you that you work with a coach, but you'll hear a cue when they can throw out their training schedule very specific to you. You can go ahead and just ask them, are you working with a coach? And anytime I'm working with a coach, a physical therapist, or anyone else within their treatment, I want to say, okay, cool. Is it okay if I contact them? I have sent coaches emails and just said, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's our massage schedule. I really want to see their massage after their hardest efforts. And you want to start to build that communication with their coaches. Not only will that actually help give them a whole entire treatment plan and tremendously increase the results all around when you and their coach are working together, but also it displays your professionalism within the arena. We want to work with these other people that are within their network and make sure that everything's in order, because we don't want to be doing some type of work that's going to counteract a coach's work or a PT's work. And the client won't always know what that is. So it's our job to work within their network. So if you have that cyclist, cues are usually if they're on some type of team and they have some type of team, or you hear that they race every weekend in the summer or through the season. Those are the type of cues or conversations where people will generally have a coach, and it's okay to say, hey, are you working with a coach? And they'll say no, or they'll say yes. And if they say yes, say, cool, at the end of the session, can I get their information, and are you okay if I contact them so we can coordinate treatment? And it's as simple as that. Usually they're really good with email. You just shoot them an email. Hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm working with your client. Here's what we'll do. And just to be informative and everybody on the same place. So do they have a coach? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or the PT, like you said, yep, on working with them. Because sometimes they'll have other information that the cyclist or the runner or what your athlete might not remember or know, in terms of, like, okay, well, maybe we won't have you work on their psoas because I'm doing these other types of treatment or this other type of work that I think would be counteractive to that. Like the coach or the physical therapist may let you know that, and the athlete wouldn't have had any idea because they wouldn't have maybe had a conversation about what that future plan was going to be or anything like that. So always good to have those secondary contacts with the network to make sure that you're really giving everybody the best care possible.
Yep.
All right. So what does sports massage in terms of actual work look like? Well, sports massage in a lot of other arenas can sometimes be mistaken for deep tissue. Even our clients will often think that a sports massage is deep tissue massage, but sports massage is not deep tissue massage. It's there for recovery. There should be no structural work done in a typical sports massage session. Now, if you're working with somebody and they have an injury, that's a little bit different, but you kind of need to know what the effects of that are. So why is sports massage not deep tissue massage?
So sports massage is not deep tissue massage because what we don't want to do is change the actual structure of the muscle. We can help to increase tone or decrease tone, but we don't want to do any structural work that'll actually change the function of the muscle. So these are clients that are doing the same sport over and over, and that muscle memory that Keena talked about is what's already implanted into the muscle. So when we start doing deep tissue or structural work, we're working with proprioception. We don't really want to change proprioception. Their muscles have already been trained to do the work that it needs to do and perform in the way that it needs to do. So we don't want to alter, from a neuromuscular standpoint, the proprioception in the muscle. Also, again, because they're training, we don't want to create any of the wound healing or any of those types of effects on the soft tissue, whether that be the fascia or the ligaments, because we don't want to put more strain on the muscles or or tension on the tendons than what's already being put on them per the sport. So it's those kind of things, or that's the way you need to start wrapping your brain around when you're thinking about the work that you are doing. And there's certain times and appropriate times of when to do that work and when not to do that work in that active training session or cycle. Say somebody has a big marathon that's coming up, or their cycle race every single weekend. That is not the time that we're going to correct structural imbalances. We simply are going to maintain the muscle performance as it is, and that will allow them to perform better. In the off season, or say wintertime or some of those other times, then we can say, let's then work on these things. But for right now, we need to just maintain those muscles and the performance that they have so that they can continue to optimally function. So we need to be very, very clear, because we've actually seen therapists in treatment sessions or at sporting events that have done deep tissue work that has not only injured the client, but their next day sucked. And there's nothing worse than being the therapist that worked on an athlete when they had a bad race. So making sure that you know the type of work. So if you're trying to, you get that athlete and we get excited about structural work and restoring those imbalances and the things that are wrong in the body, but you got to know when to do that because it's not always appropriate. So that's all I got.
Right. Yeah. So back to that muscle memory, when they're training, you know, they're laying down the groundwork, and that muscle memory is what allows them to perform at their highest peak, because it's not about the brain constantly sending this signal to the muscles to flex at a certain point of time. It's about just kind of doing it, and so they need that muscle memory in order to actually just perform, especially when we're talking about at peak. And the really awesome thing about structural work is it can kind of change those things, which when you have a negative pattern is really awesome. It can create really great change. But when we create those changes in somebody who's then trying to perform at a peak level, then they're going to have to retrain those muscles to function in this new way that we've helped create that change in. And that can be too exhaustive for the body. So when we're talking, what Celeste is talking about in that active training stage, or that when they're right before a race, doing any of those things actually is detrimental to their performance. And so, you know, it's good to keep that in mind. If, on the other hand, the athlete you're working with is injured to the point where they can't perform anyway, if it's the difference between, you know, you just let them know, like, hey, you know, you're running a marathon next week, you have all these pain issues, you know, if it's a difference between your client being able to finish that race or perform really great right until they start cramping up and then they can't finish the race, more than likely they'll say like, hey, look, just do the work so I can finish the race, and you know, I'll deal with the fact that I have a shitty time. But you need to let that athlete know what the consequences are of doing that structural work so that they can then decide, okay, yeah, that's totally something that I want to take on, or like maybe this race doesn't matter to them as much, maybe they're training for one like a few months later that's their big race. So you kind of need to let them decide. Or if they're like, you know what, I can work through the pain, I'd rather perform as well as I can possibly do at this one thing, and then after that let's get into it. So you always need to know what the effects are and present those to your athlete, and then allow them to make the decision. You should not be making that decision for them on whether this is a important race for them or whether it matters how well they perform. You can't make that distinction. They have to make that distinction themselves.
And that's another part of the re-education. So as we talked about it before, athletes oftentimes will want you to get at it, go as deep or as hard as you can.
That no
hammer
pain,
on
no
it.
gain mentality.
No pain, no gain. Hammer away, like we hear those terms because they're so tough. It's your job to help educate them on why that deeper or more structural work is not beneficial. Now going back to what Kina said, if that's truly what they ask for and you're letting them know the results, again, they're in charge of their body. We always want people to be in charge of their body. But we also need to be in charge of educating them and saying, hey, I can totally do this work if you want or you feel like you need to, but here's what could possibly happen. I don't think it's most beneficial, but if that's what you're feeling like you need. I have seen in strange cases some clients who they do ask for the deepest, most, not structural, but the deepest work that you can, hammer away is what they say, and they perform incredibly good with work like that. So everybody is different and you need to listen to them, but also make sure you educate, like, hey, now that we're doing this close to the race, it's probably not the best idea that I do that type of work, and then let them decide. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are the strange oddballs who actually can take that deep structural work and perform better with it, but it's always important to place that on the table and let them make the decision. And they may know, like, hey, I've had therapists talk to me about that before, and you know, I'm totally fine with it. Well, away, it won't negatively affect their body. And you know, you always bow to what the client is saying about their body, because remember, they're the expert. And if they want that consequence or they're not worried about it, that's up to them. So always keep that in mind too. So again, no neuromuscular, no myofascial, no deep tissue, nothing that's really going to be resetting that proprioception. So like pin and stretch in a sports massage typically is not what you're wanting to do.
Or PNF, active muscle energy techniques, those type of things. Those are all working with the proprioception and the neuromuscular links in the muscles. So yeah, we want to keep it those deep, long strokes, flushing. Same with stretches. That's the thing that we have to understand too. Sometimes when we're stretching, we want to take that leg or that muscle to its longest range of motion, and we really wanted to try to increase range of motion. When they're getting close to that race, it's not our job to try to increase their range of motion from what they already have. We want to keep it optimal. So again, with stretching too, you want to keep that in mind. We're not trying to, if a hamstring is at 90 degrees, we do not want to go 110. That's not the point of what you're trying to do. The point of what you're trying to do is keep the fluidity, keep the joint nice and fluid, good range of motion. We're kind of thinking about scaling it back just a little, and flushing and keeping the circulation good, the fascia nice and loose, all those muscle groups kind of separated and firing really well, but we're not trying to make massive changes. That's not our job right now.
Right, yeah. And again, they can be adjusted depending on where they are in their training with that. There may be sometimes in that training, especially during like race times after a big event, and they're going to be taking a couple months break or something like that. You can always help with that increase in flexibility because, again, that range of motion does help ultimately in that performance, but in the short term, we don't want to be doing that with our sports massage. And again, if for whatever reason during that active training stage, somebody does need some of that more aggressive structural work, really, really make sure that you're not doing that within 3 days before an event. Just because that's really when they're going to notice the biggest difference in terms of losing that proprioception, and it'll have the biggest impact on their performance. So if you're going to be doing structural work during an active training session or season, make sure that it is still, 4 or more days out from their actual performance event, whatever that may be.
Yeah. And you guys want to learn more about this besides just a video or Keena and I talking, get to the events. Because when you're at the events and you're around the cyclists and then you're around other therapists, you hear the conversations and then you get to really learn what it is that they're doing, what their training cycles are. So, if this is something that you really want to take further and have that basis, not even really if you want further, it's really what people know us for. It's how Keena and I pretty much started the whole entire company, is you got to be around the athletes. And those sporting events, that's why we do so many sporting events, not just because it's fun, but we enjoy being around the athletes, but we're also learning at the same time. We're learning about their sport, we're learning about their training cycles. You get to hear the questions, and you get your hands on the volume. So get yourself to the events, because that's how you'll really start to then get the experience, and then you'll be able to apply that in the treatment room.
Right. And all of this starts to really make sense when you actually see all of what we're doing in action, and working with the athletes and seeing what the results are in their body. I mean, really utilize every single client that's on your table as an opportunity to learn more. And a lot of times athletes know so much about their bodies or about their sports, like that's what they want to talk about. Utilize them as a resource to learn more about what they're doing, what their athletic arena is, what their body is doing, and you'll learn more and more about sports massage from each of those individual clients, in addition to what we're talking about today. This is, kind of strained out from Celeste and I's years and years of sports massage and going to hundreds of events, and working on so many, sports massage clients from very different arenas. But ultimately, experience and being able to apply that is what's really going to make the difference. And Symmetry is known for sports massage because it's not just like, here's a routine, do this routine, and here's some events, and here's a post-massage event thing. It's really about the expertise, really about getting to know our clients, about their specific needs within whatever athletic performance thing they're trying to do, and then catering and tailoring that massage session and the frequency of massage and all of those things to that specific person. And that's really is what our clients are looking for from a sports massage. They're looking for that expertise in addition to these XYZ specific skills. It's really that expertise that sets us apart from pretty much all the other companies out there in terms of that, especially on the scale. A lot of other places might have a couple of therapists who've done the kind of in-depth stuff we've done with sports massage, but as a company in general, it's more about the routine, or here's 5 minutes of what you do in sports massage. But really investigate your clients, and you'll benefit from it.
Yep.
And that's really what people are looking for.
Yep. So that kind of sums it up of what you're going to do in a session, the questions to ask, things that you're looking for. Again, going back, experience is the only way you're going to get really good. But those are some of the main key points or components that you need to know. So now we're going to talk about pre-event and post-event, because we are at a lot of events. So it's important for you to know what you need to be doing before an event and after event. And this means day of, we are at the race, whatever type of race that is. So pre-event, I think that a lot of times athletes get a little hesitant to get massage before an event. Most people have a very systematic routine. They're getting ready, they're a little bit nervous, and they do not want anything to juju them.
Right.
So
they're a little superstitious sometimes.
They're a little superstitious.
And
so
that's okay.
Pre-event is less likely that we will do pre-event, but knowing what you can do and when you can do it. Actually, pre-event massage can be really, really helpful for athletes, and this is because it can help just increase the blood flow and lubricate their joints. So it's a really fast-paced jostling and shaking. We're not really doing any massage strokes. It's really fluid range of motion, jostling, increasing the circulation, and we also want to start to build our energy and kind of get them in that mode.
It can also be helpful for that mental preparedness too. If somebody's like really anxious before a race, sometimes getting them on the massage table and kind of getting their body moving where they don't have to really think about it can kind of help get them out of their head a little bit. So we do see some people for pre-event massage, like Celeste said, a lot of times when we're out at a race, it's a lot less likely, we'll see maybe 2 or 3, maybe 5 at most people who are going to be looking to get pre-event massage, but it still can be effective, and it's good to know what that really is. So again, it's like Celeste said, it's jostling, it's quick movements, fast, and we're looking to increase blood flow, we're looking to increase the nervous stimulation to the area, and while you can do stretching, you do not want to be holding stretches for very long at all. It's really more range of motion stretching, so you're like putting them into the stretch position and then taking them out again. You're not leaving them in a stretch position for really any amount of time. So it's really all about just stimulating them and also getting them out of their head a little bit. Pre-event massage is really no more than 10 minutes, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes at most, but more often it's like 5. It's a very quick sort of thing. Again, that stimulation and that briskness, you want to help them feel energized, bring warmth to the tissue so they get that blood flow going, and taking those joints through. Essentially, a good rule of thumb is that the closer to an event you get, the less invasive the type of work that you're going to be wanting to do. So, I mean, that's just a general good rule of thumb, but certainly if they're like going to hop off the table and go right into their race, you want to be like really fast and really not doing anything invasive at all. Definitely no pin and stretch, what am I saying?
PNF.
PNF, yeah, sorry.
And really, Keenan and I, but in general, we don't really use much cream or lotion, but a pre-event, it's super important not to use anything on their skin. We want them to be able to sweat and breathe, especially while we have the best massage cream that there is. It actually does have beeswax, so it can be a bit occlusive. So good for dry skin, good for in between, but not pre-event. So we're really just working through clothes, jostling, brisk, getting them ready for their event.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
So your instructor will go through some good actual techniques, and again, we're just kind of going through all the knowledge stuff to know, so that when you get on the table, you'll be the most prepared. But just kind of a good general idea of what to remember pre-event. Of course, hydration is good for them and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it for pre-event. So again, general things, quick movements, nothing invasive at all. Don't hold stretches for any amount of time. It's really more a range of motion and helping them get out of their head in that mental preparedness. So pre-event, really easy, 5-10 minutes, super fast. All right, so what do we do post-event?
Post-event, so you will get a lot of people after the race.
Sometimes lines and lines of them.
Sometimes lines and lines to them. Post-event massage is awesome because it'll actually help speed up their recovery, especially if you get those people, let's say it's their first half marathon, that type of muscle soreness, it'll really help decrease. But there are some really important questions with some of these events that we do are pretty serious and hardcore. So just like you learned in massage school, we need to remind you that when you get that person on the table, you need to make sure that they're in a good state. A lot of times they will roll right off their bike or right off the finish line and want to hop on the massage table. But we need to make sure that they've properly recovered. First, what that means is their hydration, and even sometimes some nutrients or some food. They need to have that in their system so that we don't actually end up taxing their system even more. So just make sure your people are hydrated. Good question. Ask, are you hydrated? How are you feeling? There are some cues when we work with people when they're not in a good space. If they are seriously cramping a whole bunch, more than likely they have not properly recovered, properly hydrated, or have enough electrolytes. If you get people that are seriously cranky, super bitchy, can't remember their name or where their friends are or anything like that, you do not want to put them on your massage table. That will be a number one sign that they are have some type of probably dehydration, or they've gone past that. Someone gets on your table and they start complaining of really bad headaches. Doesn't depend. It doesn't matter any type of sports event. Somebody who's complaining with really bad headaches, again, they probably haven't hydrated properly or recovered properly. So a headache is a huge key. We want to just have them sit down, get some food, get some hydration. You can get your massage, but we got to get their body back into that state. And we do events all across the board. And we do them in all types of weather. Last year, we even saw some of the events when it was really cold, and some people, while they were dehydrated, they were still a little hyperthermic. So after an event, people's body temperature will rapidly decrease. So you got to make sure that their body temperature has returned. If you see somebody shivering and they can't control their body temperature, we can't do massage yet. We need their body to recover. So before we even get to the post-event massage, we need to make sure that they're in a really good state. And sometimes they don't know, so we need to really check in with them and make sure that they're okay, because we want the massage to be awesome and beneficial and not hurt them. So really be checking in on those couple things.
We also don't want to be preventing them from getting some sort of medical attention that they should be getting, because, for instance, like chills that Celeste was talking about can sometimes be a sign of shock. So, when somebody's running their first marathon, for instance, they're taxing their body more than they've ever taxed their body before. Maybe they didn't hydrate properly. Maybe they didn't get enough nutrition. Maybe they're freezing, or maybe it's really, really freaking hot and they're going into heat exhaustion or something like that. All of those things we need to be aware of, so we can send them to the medical tent to make sure that they're getting properly taken care of, and we're not delaying any of that treatment because it can be really bad for them. So just kind of keep aware when you're doing post-event massage to pay attention to how your client is really acting. And so it's good to ask a couple questions as well. So how much water have they had before a race? Sometimes it's also not just water. A lot of times it's actually electrolytes. So if they've only been slamming water and they haven't been replacing any of their electrolytes, they can actually sometimes act a little drunk because their electrolyte to water ratio is off, and that can be sometimes bad or even more worse than just not having the hydration in the first place. So sometimes it's not just water. Sometimes it's also like Gatorade or a sports drink or a salt packet or whatever, but making sure that they also have gotten that electrolyte hydration as well. Ask them how they did in the event. If they can answer that question with a lot of clarity, then usually they're pretty good. If they kind of don't really have any clear answers, they don't have an idea of where they're doing or how the race went, that might be a sign that they need some other type of recovery first. Make sure that you ask them if they're hurt or if they have any tension in any specific area. So if they have any sort of serious injury, sometimes in a race or an event, people kind of get into this high. Their adrenaline is pumping. They don't necessarily always know if they've hurt themselves seriously. So it's good to ask that question and kind of pay attention. And if it seems something serious, then you should probably send them over to the med tent. And what they would like worked on, of course, if they've had some cramping in the race in their calves and they want you to work on their crabs, or maybe their back is really sore. So again, just kind of checking in on what kind of session you're going to be giving them, and whether or not they have another event after this. So sometimes we'll be at an event that will have several races or things going on. So they may go from this one race right into another one within 30 minutes or something like that. And so then that would also make a difference on what type of work they were going to be getting as well. So active resistive stretching right after a race can cause more muscle fatigue and also cause cramping. However, if somebody is cramping, it can also be used to stop cramping. So it's kind of one of those either or things. So if somebody's not cramping, do not do any active resistive stretching on them. But if their calf is cramping on the table, you can actually use that active resistive stretching to get that cramp to stop, because it's really changing that neuromuscular junction from overfiring. But if their muscles are fatigued and you put them into that position and then you ask them to fire, then you're asking really fatigued muscles to work harder, and then you can cause cramping. So just be careful with that and know what to do. In the event of cramping on the massage table, you want to make sure that they are replacing fluids as well as electrolytes, even if that means like, hey dude, take a drink of this water bottle, or how's a sip of Gatorade because you're cramping on the table, and really just make sure you're replacing those fluids. And you can do the active resistive stretching. Oftentimes cramping is caused by fatigue, dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, which can be calcium, potassium, or magnesium, or a muscle strain or injury. So if somebody's cramping on your table, you should know all of those things that can possibly lead to cramping, and then try and help that person address each of those things. Most of the time it's from dehydration and fatigue.
Yep.
Especially right event of fatigue is pretty good.
Yep. And on the lines of fatigue, if you start working on someone and they start cramping too, it's also a signal that you may be working the tissue too deep. So the muscle will respond in that way, a protective way. It'll start cramping. So you may want to just change your technique that you're doing. And again, we're not doing any neuromuscular techniques, PNF, those type of things, because those will initiate cramping. And as Kina talked about before, when they start cramping, ask about their water to electrolyte balance. A lot of times, as she said, what you'll hear is people tend to think they need electrolytes the whole entire race, and they will drink nothing but Gatorade. And it's going to do the same thing. I mean, they will cramp just as much as if they only drank water and didn't have enough electrolytes. So you may just want to ask, because you might want to toss them a Gatorade, or you might want to toss them a water, and we usually have a cooler to keep those just for that reason. So make sure you're asking, okay, have you had water and have you had electrolytes? You know, it's those balance. We understand how the muscles work. So, and two, key, if you're working on them and they start cramping, you may need to just back it out even just more. Even if you think you're working lighter, you may just need to back it out. Sometimes you get people who they can't stop cramping. You got to pull them off your table, and you got to just have them wait until they recover and then get them back on your table, because cramping is no fun. It doesn't hurt. I mean, it doesn't feel good. It hurts. So we don't want to just keep having them go through it. Let's just say, hey, let's just get you off the table for just a few minutes. I'm going to get you to recover. Drink this Gatorade, drink this water, take this salt tablet, whatever it is that they need, and then let's get you back on the table so we can actually do a good recovery for you.
Right. So post-event massage is really flushing, and you can do more calming work post-event, because before event we want to stimulate all the muscles and get them all firing. Well, now they've done their event, they've caused their muscles to contract a whole lot for whatever during their event they were doing. So now we're just trying to calm the body back down, bring that nervous system state from a point of really high energy back to kind of a homeostasis. So all of our strokes will be long. You can use lotion and cream now. You can hold those stretches for a little bit longer to help increase with that relaxation. They're not, unless of course they're going right into another event, in which case you kind of do a little bit of a hybrid where you like relax them and then get them back up. Mm-hmm. So just to help with that recovery. So it's what does the massage do? Immediately after an event or a race, the sports massage can really help with that delayed muscle soreness the next day. So getting that flushing can help with that soreness, prevent stiffness and improper recovery that could lead to muscle or joint pain or tendon inflammation, and reduces the recovery time. So that's really what the benefits of what they're going to be getting out of the sports massage. And that also is a cue to us on what it is that we're supposed to be doing. So remember, like, keeping everything nice and calm and smooth, and helping them come down from that high that they were on while they were racing. Yep.
And also, don't forget, most of the time with sports massage, these are generally pretty short too. You know, we're just doing like 15, maybe 30. They're longer than a pre-event. You know, that 15, 30 minutes is kind of the amount of sessions that we're doing. You as therapists, you guys are still going to be seeing a large volume of clients. But this is still a time for you to market your skills. So get to know that person. And get to really kind of help educate them in how massage can help. And they can be like, oh my God, this 30 minutes is great. But make sure you tell them, all right, well, you should see what I can do in 90 minutes and how much better you're going to feel. Like, especially those people who it's their first marathon or a really big race and they just barely pulled themselves over the finish line. There's nothing more rewarding than not only getting this recovery, but being able to get them to come in. It helps to build your business, and it also helps to really support athletes. All those things feel good. So don't forget that this is still your time to show off your skills and your education and be able to connect with people. Like, you are personally connecting with each one of those clients that are on the table. You're helping them feel good. So don't be afraid to be able to talk to them about the type of work you do in a session, and then all of those things that we covered in the beginning about why we work with athletes and their training cycles and those kind of things. You can let them know how it can really help to support whatever sport it is that they're already doing.
Right. Yeah. And also, again, like post-event, we still don't want to be doing any sort of deep work. So if they do need some structural work, you can kind of talk about what you can do in a session as opposed to what you can do on the massage table post-event. Because even though they're done with their event, all of their muscles are really engorged with blood at this point. So if you do any sort of deep work, you can actually cause you can cause some deep bruising, you can cause some actual injury to the muscles. So you still don't want to be doing any structural or deep work even post-event, even though they're done with the event, because their body is so hyped up and engorged. Like their tendency towards injury from compression is a lot higher. So you want to be careful in the work that you're doing in terms of that. But you can have a little bit more with the flushing and the pressure than you did pre-event. So
yeah. So you guys, that's all we got. We got a wealth of knowledge in our head. And normally, if we were teaching a class, we'd ask everybody what questions you might have. So maybe throughout this video, I hope that you wrote questions. Whoever decides to teach your Thai sports class or sports class, whatever class it is that you're going to be taking, take those notes and write them down. If you're just watching this video for fun, take those notes. You can email me or Kina at any time. We can answer them. A lot of times, if you have a question, other people might have a question too. Post them on Facebook and we'll try to get those answered. But we hope that this is really informative for you guys and it helps to give you an idea of when to work with your clients and what type of work and sports massage is appropriate. You're going to learn some amazing techniques, and you'll even kind of really learn that customized style that Kina and I have put together and really developed over the last 5 years that we've been working with athletes, because it's incredibly effective and good for your body mechanics too. I mean, so and don't forget, like, sports events is incredibly fun. Like, you're out, there's music, there's people, it's good weather, you're in the sun, you're meeting, it's just wonderful. So if you haven't gotten out and done a sports event, highly encourage. I mean, I absolutely just love them. Just they're fun. They're fun. Do it. It's fun.
And you meet a lot of great people.
Mm-hmm.
So plus you get to hang out with us sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, have a great class. Enjoy the learning the actual techniques. I hope this has given you a lot of information. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them to us in an email or whatever. We're always happy to answer. If you have something like a specific client that you've been working with and you're not sure about, again, always come to us. We can always help you out with any of that. So
yeah.
Enjoy your class.
Bye, guys.